behind-the-scenes account of the Gilbert Arenas gun incident. In December 2009, the Washington Wizards weren't winning many games, but behind the scenes, things were going off the rails. It started on a team flight back from Phoenix. Gilbert Arenas, the team star and self-proclaimed prankster, got into a heated argument with his teammate, Javaris Cretentong, over a card game. The pot? $1,100. It is not exactly pocket change, but it is also not worth what comes next. Words were exchanged. Arenas allegedly threatened to mess up Cretentong's car, and Cretentong allegedly responded by saying he'd shoot Arenas in the knee. You know, normal team bonding. 2 days later, Gilbert walked into the locker room with 4 guns. Yes, 4. None of them loaded, but all very real. He placed them near Cretentong's locker with a note that read, "Pick one." Depending on who you ask, it was a prank, a flex, or a weird way of squashing beef. But what happened next made this more than just an awkward locker room moment. According to teammate Karen Butler, Cretentong didn't laugh. He pulled out his loaded gun and aimed it at Arenas. At this point, most of the team ran as if it were fire drill day at middle school. No one wanted to smoke, literally. The situation exploded when news broke on January 1st, 2010. The media had a field day, fans were stunned, and the NBA was in full damage control. Commissioner David Stern quickly suspended Arenas indefinitely, stating he was not currently fit to take the court. This was made worse by Gilbert doubling down with an even dumber move. During warm-ups before a game, he mockingly pointed finger guns at teammates. Yep, right after being investigated for bringing actual guns to work. So, about bad timing. Eventually, Arenas was charged with carrying an unlicensed firearm in the District of Columbia. He pleaded guilty and was sentenced to 30 days in a halfway house, 2 years probation, and 400 hours of community service, and he was suspended for the rest of the season without pay. Cretentong? It's the same deal, except he never played in the NBA again. Tragically, his life spiraled even further, and he's now serving 23 years in prison for voluntary manslaughter related to a 2011 shooting. This incident changed NBA locker room culture forever. The league implemented structure security policies, making it crystal clear no firearms on NBA property, period. Not on team planes, not in arenas, not even if you think it's just a joke. Because if this were a prank, it's the kind that ends with 2 careers ruined and a federal investigation. Years later, in a surprising twist, Arenas and Cretentong reunited on Gilbert's podcast, Gil's Arena, and discussed the event. Cretentong claimed the media had spun the story unfairly, and both men admitted that the whole thing should have gone down differently. It's a little late for that realization, but growth is growth. Greg Oden's arrest. He was once called the next big thing, a 7-foot promise, a future legend. But in August 2014, Greg Oden made headlines for all the wrong reasons. And what happened will seriously shock you. It was around 3:30 in the morning when police arrived at a home in Lawrence, Indiana, after a domestic violence call. Inside, they found Oden's ex-girlfriend battered, her face swollen, bleeding, and bruised. The living room looked like a scene from a fight, a flower pot knocked over, blood on the sofa, and silence thick in the air. Her best friend, who was there during the fight, told police exactly what happened. Greg Oden punched her. Not once, not by accident, this was serious. And here's the twist. Oden didn't try to lie or run. He sat there and told the cops the truth.
"I was wrong,"
he said.
"I know what has to happen."
No fake tears, no blaming, just regret. At first, he was hit with 2 misdemeanor battery charges, but things escalated quickly. A few days later, he was officially charged with felony battery for causing serious bodily injury. The case got real and fast. By December, Oden struck a plea deal. He pleaded guilty to the felony charge, and the other 3 charges were dropped. Then, in February 2015, the sentence came down. 999 days of probation, a $200 fine, 26 weeks of domestic violence counseling, 26 more weeks of alcohol therapy, and a strict no contact order. He couldn't call, text, or contact the victim in any way. What makes this even sadder is his career stage at the time. Just a few years earlier, he was drafted number 1 overall, yes, even before Kevin Durant. But constant knee injuries had already ruined his chances of becoming an NBA star. Now this arrest sealed it. From a can't-miss prospect to a cautionary tale, Greg Oden's story went from promise to pain, and it didn't happen on the court. Nicky Van Exel's conviction. He was the son of an NBA star, but what happened next will seriously mess with your head. In December 2010, Nicky Van Exel, son of former NBA guard Nick Van Exel, pulled the trigger in one of the most shocking betrayals you'll ever hear. Nicky shot and killed his best friend, Bradley Bassiello, right inside his home in Garland, Texas. And no, this wasn't a heat of the moment kind of thing. Prosecutors later revealed that Bradley was about to testify in court about a string of armed robberies the two had allegedly committed together. Nicky knew it and decided to silence him forever. But wait, it gets darker. After the shooting, Nicky didn't panic or call for help. He calmly wrapped Bradley's body in plastic, loaded it into his SUV, and dumped it by Lake Ray Hubbard like it was just trash. Then he went back home, cleaned the blood, and got rid of the shotgun by throwing it into a creek in North Dallas. All this, like it was a routine. He originally faced a capital murder charge, but it was later dropped to murder. His lawyers claimed it was just a horrible accident during horseplay with the gun. The jury wasn't buying it. It took them less than 3 hours to convict him. On February 1st, 2013, Nicky was sentenced to 60 years in prison. Under Texas law, he won't even be eligible for parole until he served at least 30. Inside that courtroom, emotions were all over the place. Nick Van Exel, once an NBA floor general known for clutch plays and wild confidence, was reduced to a heartbroken father begging for forgiveness. He told the victim's family how sorry he was and how he never imagined this kind of pain. Bradley's mother, Eunice Okoyeyo, stood in that same courtroom holding back tears as she called out the betrayal. She said she had treated Nicky like her own son. Now, all she had left was grief and the deafening silence of a future without her child. This wasn't just a crime, it was a complete breakdown of trust, loyalty, and everything we think we know about family. Tragedy. Anthony Grundy. This one will hit like a punch in the gut. Anthony Grundy had a strong run in basketball, especially overseas and at NC State, but what happened afterward is both shocking and heartbreaking. In 2011, the former point guard faced his 4th DWI arrest in North Carolina. Instead of dealing with it, he hopped on a plane to Ghana and lay low until 2017, when he tried to re-enter the US through New York and got picked up by authorities. He ended up with a 2-year prison sentence for that felony DWI, 5 missed court appearances, and a couple of probation violations. Talk about running. Not from defenders, but from his own mistakes. Then came June 6, 2019. Grundy got behind the wheel without a license, insurance, or even valid plates. He hit a 59-year-old woman crossing the Dixie Highway in Louisville and just drove off. 8 days later, he turned himself in, admitting the truth, but the damage was done. That incident, among others, painted a grim picture. A talented athlete spiraling straight into life-altering trouble. And then, the worst tragedy. On November 14, 2019, Grundy was involved in a domestic dispute in Louisville. Police arrived to find him gravely wounded and rushed him to a hospital where he died from multiple stab wounds. He was only 40. No one has been charged in connection with the stabbing, and the investigation is ongoing. Friends described him as a warrior and a good-hearted guy, but his life had been full of turmoil. From college stardom to an overseas pro career, Grundy's story looked promising. But once he left the limelight, legal troubles, reckless choices, and a deadly ending took over, and sadly, no one saw a redemption arc. Eddie Curry's family. Back in January 2009, Nova Henry and her 10-month-old daughter Ava were shot dead in their South Loop townhouse in Chicago. The suspect, Frederick Goings, a 36-year-old lawyer who once represented Nova in a paternity case against NBA player Eddie Curry. They had a rocky, toxic, romantic relationship. Messi doesn't even begin to cover it. Nova had tried to separate from him. In 2007, she took out an order of protection, then dropped it less than 2 weeks later. By January 2009, police said Goings crossed every possible line. Autopsies suggested Nova was holding Ava when the gunman struck. Noah was left alone with their bodies for hours before he told authorities Goings did it and even mimed to be quiet to the cops. Absolutely chilling. Security footage traced Goings' vehicles, a BMW and a Range Rover, circling the townhouse before the shooting. Then he hightailed it to a Comfort Inn in Michigan City, Indiana, where he managed to use both the pool and the laundry machines. In his vehicle, cops found gunshot residue. But during his trial in early 2013, Goings claimed he was innocent and kept insisting that no physical evidence tied him to the crimes. Still, the jury took only 4 hours to find him guilty of 2 counts of first-degree murder. The jury had initially charged 4 counts, which were later reduced. In April 2013, he was sentenced to life in prison, no chance of parole. The judge called him a predator. Eddie Curry was granted custody of Noah. Nova's mom, Yolande Henry, went from grief to advocacy, speaking out against domestic violence to help others avoid the same nightmare. Robert Swift's rise and fall. Robert Swift once had it all. Drafted 12th overall straight out of high school by the Seattle Supersonics in 2004, towering over 7 feet tall, pro potential was real, but his body, or rather his knees, said not today. At 21, he tore his ACL and missed a full season. Then he damaged his lateral meniscus. By 2009, Seattle declined to pick him up again, and just like that, his NBA star dream vanished. Swift had earned approximately $11 million during his career. He splurged on a mansion in Samish, Washington, but by 2011, he stopped paying the mortgage, and in 2013, a local report showed the house trashed. Broken glass, spoiled food, holes in walls, heroin needles, and even guns and ammo. Not a good look. Then came the bombshell. In 2014, police raided a Seattle area home. Swift was inside, surrounded by heroin, meth, stolen items, sawed-off shotguns, AR-15s, other handguns, and thousands of rounds. He admitted to using heroin and living there. In 2015, he pleaded guilty to possessing a short-barreled shotgun, getting 1 year in prison and 3 years of supervised release. After its release in 2016, Swift steered away from pro ball. He has since stayed close to the sport, coaching youth teams and playing locally, but the NBA stage is long behind him. Derrick Rose's peed. This will mess with your head. Derrick Rose, the golden boy of the NBA in 2011, might have accidentally exposed something huge, or maybe not. That year, Rose wasn't just any player. He was the youngest MVP ever, the pride of Chicago, and flying on the court like he had springs in his shoes. But then, out of nowhere, one interview nearly flipped the NBA upside down. In an ESPN The Magazine feature, Rose was asked about performance-enhancing drugs in the league. Simple question, right? But his answer? Wild. He allegedly said 7 out of 10 when asked how big the problem was, then added, "It's huge, and I think we need a level playing field where nobody has that advantage." That one quote, it set the internet on fire. Fans started questioning everything. Is the league clean? Are players secretly juicing up? What did Derrick just say? But here's where it gets confusing. Rose, through the Bulls media team, quickly pulled a U-turn. He said he didn't even remember that part of the interview, and that if he said something like that, he must have misunderstood the question. According to him, there's no ped problem in the NBA at all. It's just a big misunderstanding apparently. But ESPN wasn't backing down. They stood firm, saying the interview took place in November 2010, the quote was accurate, and it wasn't taken out of context. So now it turned into a weird standoff. The MVP versus the media. No corrections, no follow-up from Rose, and ESPN kept the quote in print. It left fans stuck in the middle, wondering was this a real leak or just a communication fail? And that's the thing. To this day, nobody knows. The quote still exists, the denial still stands, and the debate is still very real. Drafted 13th overall in 1998, Clark was that lanky, explosive big man. He averaged over 8 points, nearly 6 boards, and blocked shots as he meant it. But here's the crazy part. He later admitted he never played sober ever. He downed half to a full pint of gin every single day, even sneaking drinks at halftime. Yes, during games. It's no wonder his NBA career lasted only 6 seasons. When his off-court issues caught up, drugs, duties, and weapons charges, he faced serious legal trouble. In 2006, he skipped court but was caught boarding a bus in Houston. Fast forward to 2013, drunkenly crashing into a telephone pole while on parole led to an 8-year plea deal. He ultimately served a 4-year term before being released in July 2017. But here's the twist. Clark calls those years the education of me. He discovered yoga, meditation, philosophy, and even Toastmasters within prison, arguably achieving more personal growth than he ever did on the court. Today, at 44, he's living back in Danville, Illinois, sober, speaking publicly, and helping others with his story. He's even popping up at the local YMCA and giving motivational talks, all without bullet points or number lists, he promises. Rodney Rogers' spiral, a brutal accident. Now, flip the court over to Rodney Rogers, whose spiral was not about losing control, but a brutal accident. This guy had real NBA success. 6th Man of the Year in 2000, over $27 million earned across 7 teams. Then 2008 hit like a freight train. On an ATV ride in rural North Carolina, he crashed, shattered his 3rd cervical vertebrae, and bruised the 4th. He became paralyzed from the shoulders down, with doctors giving him a 5% chance of walking again. He needed a ventilator and entered intensive spinal rehab. Today, Rogers lives with immense challenges. Daily care, a motorized wheelchair operated by his head, and medical bills that topped $400,000 a year. Depression and suicidal thoughts hit hard, but his fiancée, Fa Suggs, stayed by his side, grounding him when everything fell apart. But Rogers refused to let life define him. He co-founded a foundation to support individuals with spinal injuries, began speaking publicly to raise awareness, and became a passionate advocate. In April 2024, he sued Blue Cross Blue Shield of North Carolina, accusing them of denying essential in-home nursing care. By the end of May, Rogers voluntarily dismissed the case, but the fight for proper care continues. So next time someone says, "What could go wrong?" just remember, these guys lived it, but they didn't vanish. They found a new purpose in the rubble, and honestly, that speaks louder than any stat line ever could. Shawn Kemp's legal. This is going to blow your mind. Shawn Kemp, once known as the sky-soaring Rain Man, has found himself in serious legal trouble, and it's not just old headlines. In April 2005, police pulled over Kemp in Shoreline, Washington after smelling marijuana. In his parked car, officers discovered about 60 grams of weed, some cocaine, and a semi-automatic pistol. Kemp pleaded guilty to possessing more than 40 grams of marijuana. Yep, that was a rough end to his NBA-era celebration. Fast forward to July 2006, and he was in Houston, Texas again, pulled over for weed, this time less than 2 ounces, grabbed a misdemeanor, paid a bond, and was on his way. Then comes the wild chapter. In March 2023, Kemp's cell phone and some valuable collectibles like his game-worn jerseys were stolen from his truck. Using a tracking app, he located the thieves in a Toyota 4Runner near Tacoma Mall, what turned from a recovery mission into a dramatic turn. Witnesses say Kemp confronted the 4Runner occupants. Suddenly, shots were fired. Kemp maintains that he only defended himself after he was shot at first. Even so, prosecutors hit him with serious charges, 2 counts of first-degree assault plus a drive-by shooting addition. He pleaded not guilty at first and was released on his recognizance. But in May 2025, the case took a dramatic turn. Kemp pleaded guilty to second-degree assault in Pierce County, Washington. This plea deal knocked off the heavier charges and dropped the firearm enhancements. The deal came with prosecutors recommending 9 months in jail, followed by a year of supervised release and restitution. Kemp will also lose his right to own guns and must submit DNA for law enforcement. Sentencing is set for August 22, 2025. Now hold on to your seats. No one was hurt in the shooting, but 2 vehicles were damaged. Kemp's legal team argues self-defense, and the plea deal reflects that, even though video apparently shows he fired the first shot as he exited his vehicle. From NBA stardom, 6-time All-Star, and a major part of the Supersonics' 1996 finals team, to cannabis entrepreneur, Kemp's life has been a roller coaster. After playing for Seattle, Cleveland, Portland, and Orlando from 1989 to 2003, he later opened dispensaries in Seattle and pushed for the Supersonics' return. But now he's back in the courtroom and potentially headed to jail. All this leads to a complicated, high-stakes moment. Kemp is trading slam dunks for legal gambles, fighting for a future that might include jail time, reputational damage, but also, hopefully, redemption. His sentencing in August will be the next pivotal chapter. Michael Sugar Ray Richardson was a superstar, dominant in his prime, but his story takes you on a roller coaster from fame to free fall and back again. Drafted 4th overall in 1978, he quickly made a name by leading the league in assists and steals, earning 4 All-Star nods and a reputation as a game changer. He even claimed the NBA's Comeback Player of the Year award in 1985 after battling personal demons. But that comeback hit a cliff. After testing positive for cocaine 3 times between 1983 and 1986, Commissioner David Stern slapped him with a lifetime ban in February 1986, marking him as the first player ever sidelined permanently under the NBA's anti-drug policies. But Richardson had other plans. Instead of fading into obscurity, he rebuilt his life overseas, playing in Italy, Croatia, and France until 2002, then turned to coaching in smaller leagues, including the CBA and Canada's NBL. His story isn't just about dusting off his shoes, it's about resilience. He has even recently released a memoir, Banned: How I Squandered an All-Star NBA Career Before Finding My Redemption, which is scheduled for release on November 26, 2024. In it, he goes deep into his rise, addiction, fall, and surprising comeback. Today, Richardson's not lost, he's alive and working hard to pay it forward. He runs youth basketball clinics alongside his former teammate Otis Birdsong, teaches kindergarten students, and helps coach the next generation. Oh, and he co-owns a beauty salon with his wife. Yes, you heard that right. Ball handling in the beauty biz. This is a story that will shock you insane. It's about stardom and stumbles, but also growth so real it shines through. From court hero to band player to older mentor and businessman, Richardson proves that even with your worst mistake on the record, you can still write new chapters. And trust me, this one's just getting started. Steven Jackson and Steve Francis' nightclub fight. This one will seriously make you do a double take. It was September 2013 at a Houston nightclub when things got wildly out of hand. Steven Jackson, yes, the same guy who spent years dunking in the NBA, was on stage rapping as his alter ego Stack 5, when former All-Star Steve Francis suddenly popped up behind him. Jackson later said the appearance was unplanned and tension in the crowded club was already high. Next thing you know, Jackson's hand is around Francis's throat on camera while chaos erupts, and the video goes viral the next day. This clip, grainy, intense, and captured in vivid detail, had fans gasping. 2 ex-NBA big names straight up scrapping at a live event. It didn't end in court, no arrests, no charges, just embarrassment and wild online chatter. Jackson later appeared on Highly Questionable and offered his version. They never ran with the same circles. Francis basically ambushed him and Jackson grabbed his throat reflexively. My hands ended up on his throat, as he put it. Jackson still gets a little red-faced recalling it, but he kept it real. I was performing, he came at me, I reacted, he admitted. Meanwhile, Francis stayed silent, letting the clip do the talking. The internet exploded, tweets, memes, debate, but nothing serious followed legally. Still, this crazy moment is a reminder. Even retired stars can find themselves tangled in drama when offstage and unfiltered. It didn't ruin them, but it sure made a scene people still talk about. Proof that when egos, fame, and crowded party vibes collide, things can blow up fast. William Bedford's fall. William Bedford came into the NBA as a giant, literally, at 7 feet tall and picked 6th overall in the 1986 draft. He had a bright future ahead. He even found himself on the Detroit Pistons championship team in 1990, but off the court, things began to get messy. Drugs started taking hold. By 2001, Bedford was pulled over in Michigan with 25 pounds of marijuana in his car. Yes, you heard that right. That arrest wasn't a one-off. He had already faced drug problems back in the NBA. He later admitted that someone told him, "You know more people, make more money," leading him to start selling, first weed, then cocaine. As he said, the dumbest idea in the world. It didn't take long for things to spiral. In 2003, Bedford was convicted of cocaine possession with intent to distribute, a serious charge that carried a 10-year prison sentence. Those prison walls were a wake-up call. It became survival mode as he faced threats, darkness, and the reality of rock bottom. He was eventually released in November 2011, and in a twist worthy of a redemption story, began coaching and mentoring young players back in Memphis. He used his own mistakes as powerful lessons, delivering a message that could seriously shock you. Talent and fame don't protect you from yourself. Bedford's journey, from NBA promise to drug arrest to a decade behind bars and now to a mentor using hard-won wisdom, is a raw, real example of how life can spiral fast. But it's also about climbing back, using pain to guide others, and proving that sometimes the hardest lessons lead to the most meaningful second chances. Leon Smith's Breakdown.
Leon Smith's story will shock you. Insane. A real-life example of raw talent meeting mental health struggles and no safety net in sight. He shot to fame right out of high school in Chicago, where he averaged an incredible 25.5 points and 14.5 rebounds per game. Drafted 29th overall in 1999 by the Spurs and immediately traded to the Mavericks, this 7-foot phenom was supposed to light up the NBA. But things unraveled fast. Leon was raised in foster care from age 5, moving through group homes in Illinois. In Dallas, he refused to play in the minor leagues or overseas, clashing with coaches before the season even started. By November, stress hit hard. He painted his face like an Indian fighting Columbus, smashed a car window with a rock, and then overdosed on about 250 aspirin in what was a breakdown. That led to a psychiatric hospitalization and criminal mischief charges. Things spiraled. More deeply, he threatened his ex-girlfriend with a gun one day, then damaged her mother's car the next. In February 2000, the Mavericks cut him loose. He never played a single NBA game for them, but they still had to honor his $1.45 million contract. But Leon didn't disappear. He tried to bounce back, playing in minor leagues and getting a 10-day NBA stint with the Hawks in 2002. He later signed with the CBA and had a brief one-game return with the Supersonics, playing internationally through 2007. His talent was real, but the support, maturity, and mental health care just weren't there. Today, Leon Smith is largely off the radar, his whereabouts unknown. But his story remains a stark example of what happens when a young athlete's brain, background, and the spotlight collide without the right backup. His journey is a heartbreaking reminder that sometimes the biggest obstacles aren't on the court, they're inside your head. Darius Miles Breakdown. Darius Miles was a teenage basketball phenom who pulled in a whopping $62 million only to tumble into financial chaos, mental health battles, and a shocking arrest. Let's dive in. Darius exploded onto the NBA scene straight from high school in 2000, becoming the 3rd overall pick by the Clippers and earning all-rookie first-team honors in 2001. He later played alongside LeBron James in Cleveland and earned a hefty 6-year, $48 million deal with the Trailblazers. But his career never fully recovered from injuries and off-court issues. Fast forward to August 2011. Miles was arrested at St. Louis Airport with a loaded gun in his carry-on bag. That landed him in hot water with serious weapon charges. By 2016, the financial damage was done and he filed for bankruptcy. Despite earning millions, his asset balance was only about $460,000, while his debts skyrocketed past $1.5 million. Nearly $300,000 of that was owed to the IRS, and shady investments and business deals wiped out much of his fortune. That same year, Miles got brutally candid in the Players Tribune, writing about crippling depression after his mother died in 2013. He admitted that it was easy to lose control when millions of dollars hit your bank account too quickly. When you're young, you think the money is going to last forever, he wrote, and he confessed it wasn't fast cars that took him down, but bad investments and shady business deals. The good news? He's still around and turning things around.
Since 2019, Miles has been co-hosting the Knuckleheads podcast with Quentin Richardson, where they bring in NBA guests and have real conversations about life after basketball. Additionally, in 2023, he faced legal troubles again, linked to a healthcare fraud case, but was granted probation. Today, he's rebuilding his life, sharing his story, and using his platform wisely. Wright's breakdown. Wright was a 7'2" giant whose NBA dream turned into a deep breakdown, followed by a surprising climb back into life. Drafted 18th overall by the Utah Jazz in 1993, he had all the skills and size to shine. Yet, just months into his rookie season, something snapped. In January 1994, he was found at a rest stop near Salt Lake City, smashing garbage cans and breaking car windows, clearly in crisis, and was taken to a psychiatric facility where doctors diagnosed him with bipolar disorder. That diagnosis marked the beginning of a severe decline. After being released from the Jazz, Wright fell into substance abuse and homelessness. He once wandered the streets so hopelessly that 2 toes had to be amputated from frostbite in 2004, a full decade after his NBA start. Even worse, he spent years in crack houses, living on next to nothing in the freezing winter. But the story doesn't end in darkness. Around 2007, Wright connected with the Morning Star Community Christian Center in Linden, New Jersey, where a community helped him rebuild. He found faith, structure, and a purpose beyond basketball. Leaning into that new life, he wrote a memoir called A Perfect Fit, released in November 2010, where he shared his raw journey from NBA promise to mental breakdown, then drug addiction, homelessness, and finally recovery grounded in spirituality. Wright's fall from grace wasn't just steep, it was life-threatening. But it also proves that recovery can come from the most broken moments. He didn't rebound back onto NBA courts, but he found something more lasting, a second chance, a voice, and a life rebuilt piece by piece. Melvin Turpin, suicide. Melvin Turpin, once a college hero and NBA draft star, quietly battled inner demons before dying by suicide at just 49. Turpin made the All-American team at Kentucky and helped lead the Wildcats to the Final Four in 1984. He was drafted 6th overall that same year by the Washington Bullets and traded to the Cavaliers. But his pro career never matched his college brilliance. He averaged about 8.5 points and 4.6 rebounds over 5 seasons with Cleveland, Utah, and Washington. But his struggle with weight often overshadowed his performance. After retiring, Turpin lived a modest life as a security guard, most recently at the University of Kentucky Hospital, where those who knew him said he was kind, friendly, and always smiling. On July 8, 2010, police found him dead in his Lexington home from a self-inflicted gunshot wound. The coroner confirmed his death was suicide, and while no note was made public, his sister revealed he had struggled with diabetes and had recently watched his wife deal with heart surgeries. Neighbors and teammates were stunned. Many spoke of Turpin's quiet happiness, describing him as always upbeat and gentle, making his death even harder to understand. His passing reopened painful conversations about what happens when athletes move on from the spotlight, fame fades, routines vanish, and for some, the silence becomes too loud. Turpin's life reminds us that success on the court doesn't always mean peace off it. His gentle spirit and unspoken struggles leave a haunting question. How many other retired athletes are quietly fighting battles the world will never see? Walter Davis, addiction. This one will shock you. Insane. 2 very different but troubling NBA stories that show how fame and fortune can sometimes crumble into chaos. First, let's talk about Walter Davis, one of the smoothest scorers of the late 70s and 80s. A 6-time All-Star. In face of the Phoenix Suns, Davis dazzled defenders with his mid-range game. But behind the elegance on the court, he was battling heavy drugs and alcohol use. In December 1985, after scoring a career-high 43 points, he voluntarily checked himself into a rehab clinic to face his cocaine and alcohol addiction. He came back strong in January 1986, but the fight wasn't over. By April 1987, he relapsed, admitted it, and was suspended from the season's final game. His testimony later helped indict other players involved in a drug scandal.
Though he played 2 more seasons with Denver and Portland, his peak years were behind him. Davis later returned to Phoenix as a broadcaster and scout, saw his number 6 retired in 1994, and in 2024 earned a Hall of Fame induction, showcasing how even amid personal battles, grace and redemption can still emerge. Chris Gatling. Now let's switch gears. Chris Gatling, a hard-working NBA All-Star, ended up in legal trouble after his playing days. Between October 2014 and February 2015, he ran a telemarketing fraud in Arizona, convincing elderly victims to buy fake websites and promising them monthly returns. He collected over $155,000 from 12 victims. Some even handed over life savings, then spent the money on clothes, dining, and other comforts instead of delivering what he promised. Gatling pleaded guilty and was sentenced in December 2017 to 2.5 years in prison, ordered to repay $167,000 and given 3 years of probation. And this wasn't his first stumble. Back in 2013, he pled guilty to squatting in a Paradise Valley home and got 4 years probation. His fall from an all-star to a convicted fraudster reminds us how quickly things can unravel without a stable plan after the final buzzer. The dark side of Dennis Rodman. When most people hear the name Dennis Rodman, they think of rainbow-colored hair, wild outfits, and elite rebounding. But underneath the tattoos and headlines was a man battling demons far louder than any crowd at the United Center. Rodman's life wasn't just wild, it was painful, raw, and at times heartbreaking. Let's be honest, the guy partied with Madonna, wore a wedding dress to promote his book, and somehow ended up in North Korea giving Kim Jong-un birthday hugs. But before all that chaos, there was just a scared, lonely kid from Dallas trying to survive. Rodman's childhood was no sitcom. His father left when he was a toddler, and his mother worked multiple jobs just to keep the lights on. He described himself as invisible, unwanted, and insecure. He didn't play varsity basketball in high school. He was too short and too awkward. Then he shot up nearly a foot after graduation, and suddenly he found himself with a basketball scholarship at a tiny college in Oklahoma. Still, he felt like an outsider. Even after making the NBA and earning a spot on the bad boy Pistons, his insecurities never left. Things took a darker turn in 1993 when his mentor and coach Chuck Daly left the Pistons. That's when Rodman hit rock bottom. One night he sat alone in his truck in a Palace of Auburn Hills parking lot with a loaded rifle. He later admitted he wasn't planning to hurt anyone else, just himself. He dozed off listening to Pearl Jam, and when the police found him, he was still alive but emotionally shattered. That wasn't a headline, it was a cry for help the world almost missed. Then came the fame spiral. Rodman's marriage to Annie Bakes fell apart, partly due to his rising fame and alleged infidelities. That heartbreak mixed with his loneliness became toxic. He leaned into the chaos, dyeing his hair, partying nonstop, wrestling in the WWE, and showing up at games hungover or worse. He kicked a cameraman in 1997, got suspended, and paid $200,000 in fines. You might laugh at the antics now, but many of them were fueled by alcohol and untreated mental health issues. An alcohol man, it nearly ended him. After retiring, Rodman battled addiction publicly, multiple DUI arrests, failed rehab stints, and wild outbursts on reality TV showed a man spiraling. His friends said he'd go missing for days. His agent called him an alcoholic in interviews. Even when he tried to get help, the spotlight kept him in a cycle of shame and performance. And while the world kept watching Rodman the clown, Dennis the person was falling apart. Perhaps the saddest part of this story,
the toll it took on his family. His daughter Trinity Rodman, now a soccer star, called him an absent father. She spoke about growing up without his support while the world worshipped him as a pop culture icon. Rodman has tried to make amends, but some wounds don't heal with apologies. His fame came with a cost few of us would be willing to pay. And yet, despite everything, Rodman is a 5-time NBA champion, a Hall of Famer, and arguably the greatest rebounder ever. That's the paradox. He was both a hero and a hurricane. His story isn't just about basketball, it's about pain, survival, and the messy road to self-acceptance. He said it best himself, "I killed the person I was pretending to be." That honesty, especially from someone who made headlines for all the wrong reasons, makes his story one of the most human in NBA history. And that was the real Dennis Rodman. A walking headline, yes, but also a man who nearly lost everything before the world even knew his name. If you think that was wild, wait till you hear what the NBA tried to hide next. So hit subscribe, click the bell icon, and don't just watch the game, understand the players behind the chaos.